The envelope arrived on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and the moment I saw the return address scrawled in shaky handwriting, my heart stopped. My father Joel, the man my family had declared dead 28 years ago because he loved another man, was reaching out from the grave. I stood frozen in the doorway of my Seattle apartment, rain dripping from my coat onto the hardwood floor, the letter trembling between my fingers like it might burn me. At 32, I had built what looked like a solid life, a graphic design job downtown, a circle of friends who never asked too many questions, and a quiet relationship with Mark that we kept hidden even from each other most days. But this single piece of paper threatened to crack everything open. I had grown up hearing the story in hushed tones at holiday dinners. Joel disappeared when I was 2. He died in a car accident, Mom would say, her voice tight, eyes darting away. Later, when I was old enough to notice the missing photos and the way Grandma crossed herself whenever his name slipped out, the truth leaked through in fragments. He hadn't died. The family had simply decided he was dead to them the day they found out he was gay. In our tight-knit Catholic community outside Portland, that was how you handled shame. You buried it alive. They told everyone he was gone, changed the locks, and raised me as if I had never had a father at all. I learned to stop asking. I learned to carry the emptiness without naming it. Now, at 32, I was doing the same thing they had done, just quieter. Mark and I had been together for 14 months, stealing weekends in Vancouver or late-night drives along the coast where no one knew us. He wanted more, Sunday brunches with friends, a shared lease, maybe even telling his sister. I always found a reason to wait. It's not the right time, I'd say, and he would nod, but his eyes carried the weight of every time I chose silence. The letter felt like judgment from the past, and a mirror to my present all at once. I tore it open right there in the hallway, ignoring the puddle forming at my feet. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, the kind you buy at any drugstore. Victor, I know this will come as a shock. I'm alive. I've been in Ashland, Oregon, for the last 20 years. There are things you deserve to know, things I should have told you myself. If you want to hear them, I'll be at the bench by the duck pond in Lithia Park every Saturday morning at 10. No pressure. I just want you to have the choice I never got. Dad. No signature beyond that single word. Dad. It landed like a stone in my chest. I read it 3 times, then folded it and shoved it into my pocket as if hiding it could undo the fact that it existed. That night, I barely slept. Mark texted asking if I wanted company, but I lied and said I had an early deadline. Instead, I sat on the fire escape with a warm beer, staring at the city lights, wondering how many other lies my family had told me. By Friday, I had called in sick to work, packed an overnight bag, and pointed my old Subaru south. The drive down I-5 gave me too much time to think. I remembered the way Mom would flinch whenever anyone mentioned alternative lifestyles on the news. I remembered my cousin's wedding where Uncle Ray got drunk and muttered that some sins you don't forgive. I remembered being 16 and kissing Tommy Hargrove behind the bleachers, then spending 3 months terrified someone would find out and do to me what they had done to my father. The fear had never left. It had just learned to wear better clothes. Ashland appeared like a postcard at the bottom of the valley, trees blazing red and gold, even though it was only early October. I parked near the park and walked the path to the duck pond with my hands shoved deep in my pockets. The bench was empty at first. Then I saw him. A man in his late 50s, gray at the temples, wearing a faded denim jacket and holding 2 paper cups of coffee. He looked up as I approached, and the recognition in his eyes nearly knocked me over. It was the same shade of hazel as mine. "Victor," he said, voice rough like he hadn't used it in days. "You came." I didn't know what to do with my hands. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to yell. Instead, I took the coffee he offered and sat on the far end of the bench. "You look alive," I managed. He laughed softly, the sound carrying years of unsaid things. "Yeah. Turns out dying is harder than they made it sound." Ducks quacked at our feet, oblivious. For a long minute, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know the truth before it's too late." I sipped the coffee to keep my voice steady. "What truth?" Joel looked out over the water. "That I never stopped being your father. And that the family didn't kill me. They just made sure no one would ever look for me." The words hung between us like fog. I felt the ground shift under my feet, the same way it had when I first realized I was gay at 14 and understood exactly why my father had vanished. This man sitting beside me had lived a life I was still too afraid to claim. And somehow, against every lie I had been fed, he had survived it. The coffee went cold in my hands while Joel talked. He told me how the night they confronted him, my grandparents had sat him down in the dining room with Mom 8 months pregnant with me. They gave him a choice: leave quietly and never contact us again, or watch them take me away the moment I was born and raise me as an orphan. They said a child needed a normal home, he said, voice cracking. I was 24, broke, and terrified they could actually do it. So I left. I wrote letters every year on your birthday. Your mother returned every one unopened. After a while I stopped sending them, but I never stopped thinking about you. I stared at the ripples on the pond, trying to fit this new version of my life over the old one. The man who had supposedly died in a fiery crash on Highway 101 had actually been living 40 minutes away the whole time, working construction, volunteering at the local theater, and quietly building a life he could never share. Why now? I asked. After all this time? Joel rubbed his jaw. I got diagnosed with Parkinson's last spring. Nothing dramatic yet, but it reminded me how fast time disappears. I figured if I didn't reach out now, I might never get the chance to tell you I'm sorry. And that I'm proud of you, even if I don't know the man you've become. The word proud landed like a punch. I had spent my whole life trying not to become him, and here he was offering approval I hadn't earned. My phone buzzed, Mark checking in. I silenced it. I need time, I said finally. This is a lot. He nodded like he had expected nothing less. Take all the time you need. I'll be here every Saturday. Same bench. Same coffee. No strings. I drove back to Seattle that night in a daze. The next morning, I told Mark everything over pancakes at our usual diner. He listened without interrupting, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand right there where anyone could see. You have to go back, he said. And this time I'm coming with you. That single sentence cracked something open inside me. For the first time in years, I didn't pull away. Instead, I nodded, and for the rest of breakfast, we talked about what it might mean to stop hiding. The fear was still there, but it felt smaller next to the possibility of knowing my father. The following weekend, we made the drive together. Mark kept the music light and the conversation easy, but I could feel the tension rolling off me in waves. When we reached the park, Joel was already waiting, 2 extra coffees in hand, like he had known I might not come alone. He stood when he saw us, eyes moving from me to Mark and back again with quiet understanding. Dad, this is Mark, I said, the word dad feeling foreign on my tongue. My partner. Joel smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. Good to meet you, Mark. Any man who can get my son to drive 4 hours twice in 1 week must be special. The 3 of us sat on the bench, ducks fighting over breadcrumbs, and for the first time in my life, the word family didn't feel like a threat. That afternoon, Joel took us to his small house on the edge of town, a tidy craftsman with a porch swing and flower boxes still blooming late in the season. Inside, the walls were covered with theater playbills and photos of people I didn't recognize. No pictures of me, but I understood why. He made spaghetti the way my grandmother used to, and we talked until the streetlights came on. He told stories about the early days with Mom, how they had been high school sweethearts before everything went wrong. He never once badmouthed her. She was scared, he said simply. We all were. On the drive home, Mark fell asleep in the passenger seat, and I let myself imagine a future where Saturday mornings included both of them. The thought terrified me and thrilled me in equal measure. Monday morning, the illusion shattered. My mother called at 6:30, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Your cousin saw you in Ashland. With him. Victor, what were you thinking? I sat on the edge of my bed, Mark still asleep beside me, and felt every year of careful distance collapse. She didn't wait for an answer. That man is dead to this family. He made his choice. Don't you dare drag us back into his mess. I hung up without saying goodbye, heart hammering. Mark rolled over, eyes sleepy but concerned. Your mom. I nodded. He reached for my hand. We knew this might happen. The next 3 days were a blur of texts and voicemails from aunts, uncles, even my grandmother, who hadn't spoken to me directly in years. They all said the same thing in different words: leave the past buried. Each message chipped away at the fragile peace I had found. By Thursday, I was raw. Mark suggested we take the weekend off and head back to Ashland anyway. You can't let them control your story anymore, he said. We arrived to find Joel waiting on his porch, looking smaller somehow. He had heard through the grapevine too. Your mother called me yesterday, he admitted as we sat in his kitchen. First time in 28 years. She told me if I didn't stop seeing you, she would make sure you lost your job and your apartment. He laughed without humor. Like she still has that kind of power. I stared at him. She threatened you? She threatened you, he corrected gently. I told her the only power she has left is the power I give her by staying silent. Something in his voice reminded me of Mark's quiet strength, and I realized for the first time that the men in my life had been teaching me courage all along. I had just been too afraid to listen. That night the three of us walked the downtown plaza, strings of lights twinkling overhead. Joel pointed out the theater where he had built sets for 20 years. I never got to take you to a show when you were little, he said. But I kept every program. Thought maybe one day. His voice trailed off. I reached out and squeezed his shoulder, the first time I had touched him since that first Saturday. The gesture felt like crossing a bridge I had been staring at my whole life. Back at the house, Joel pulled out a worn shoebox from the hall closet. Inside were dozens of birthday cards, school photos my mother must have mailed him in secret before she stopped, and a single ultrasound picture from the day they found out I was a boy. I carried this with me everywhere, he said. Even when I thought I'd never see you again. Tears I had been holding since the letter finally broke free. Mark stayed quiet, letting us have the moment, and I understood then that love wasn't about never being afraid. It was about choosing to stay anyway. The betrayal came on a Tuesday. I was back in Seattle, trying to catch up on work, when my best friend Sarah showed up at my apartment unannounced. We had known each other since college, shared every secret except the biggest one. She hugged me tight, then sat on my couch and said, "Your mom called me. She's worried. She told me about your father and about Mark." The floor dropped out from under me. I had never told Sarah I was gay. The only way she knew was if my mother had pieced it together and decided to use my best friend as a weapon. She asked me to talk some sense into you, Sarah continued, eyes shiny with tears. Vic, I love you, but this is crazy. That man abandoned you. Your family only wants what's best. I stared at her, the woman who had held my hand through breakups and deadlines, now repeating the same lines I had heard my whole life. Get out, I said quietly. She tried to argue, but I opened the door and waited until she left. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. Mark found me on the floor 2 hours later, staring at nothing. He didn't say, "I told you so." He simply sat beside me and pulled me against his chest until I could breathe again. "We'll get through this," he whispered. That night we talked about moving, about building a life where no one could weaponize our love against us. For the first time I said the words out loud. I'm done hiding. The decision tasted like freedom and terror mixed together. We drove to Ashland the next morning without telling anyone. Joel met us at the door with fresh coffee and no questions. Over breakfast, he listened as I told him about Sarah. When I finished, he nodded slowly. I lost friends too. Some of them were the ones who helped my parents change the locks. It hurts worse than the family sometimes, because you expect them to choose you. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. But you're choosing yourself now. That's the part they can't take away. The weekend became a turning point. Joel showed us his workshop in the garage, where he built miniature sets for local plays. Mark, who had always loved theater, asked 100 questions. I watched them bond over paint colors and lighting angles, and something inside me settled. This was what family could look like when no one was keeping score. Thanksgiving arrived like a storm. My mother called on Wednesday demanding I come home, where I belong. When I refused, she hung up. I spent the holiday with Joel and Mark, cooking a small turkey in Joel's kitchen while football played in the background. It was the first Thanksgiving I could remember that didn't feel like walking on eggshells. We laughed until our sides hurt, told stories that had nothing to do with shame, and when Joel raised his glass and said, "To choosing your own family," I felt tears prick my eyes again. The real confrontation came 2 weeks later. My mother showed up at Joel's house without warning, eyes blazing. She had driven 4 hours fueled by righteous anger. "You stole my son," she accused the moment the door opened. Joel stood calm in the doorway. "I didn't steal anyone, Ellen." He came looking for answers. I stepped outside, Mark right behind me. The four of us stood on the porch in the cold December air. Mom turned on me. After everything we did to protect you, this is how you repay us? Parading around with him and his lifestyle? The word lifestyle landed like a slap. I looked at her, at the woman who had raised me alone, who had carried the weight of every lie, and felt something shift from anger to pity. Mom, I said quietly, I'm gay. I have been since I was 14. And the only thing that ever hurt me was being taught to hate that part of myself because of what happened to Dad. She flinched like I had struck her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she whispered, I was trying to keep you safe. Joel's voice was gentle. We both failed at that, Ellen. But maybe we can stop failing now. She looked between us, years of pain and pride warring on her face. Finally, she turned and walked back to her car without another word. The taillights disappeared down the street, and I felt the last chain snap. That night, the three of us sat on the porch swing long after dark. Joel told me about the partner he had lost to cancer 5 years earlier, how love had found him again after he thought it never would. Mark rested his head on my shoulder, and I realized the journey that started with a letter had led me exactly where I needed to be. Spring came early to Ashland. The trees along the plaza bloomed pink and white, and the duck pond reflected a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Joel's Parkinson's had progressed slowly, but his smile never dimmed. Mark and I had moved into a little rental 2 blocks from his house, close enough to help when he needed it, far enough to build our own life. I had come out at work in January. The sky hadn't fallen. Some clients left, but more stayed. The ones who mattered stayed. One Saturday morning, we found Joel at the bench as usual, but this time he had brought a small wooden box. Inside were 2 envelopes, one addressed to me in his handwriting, one to my mother. I wrote them the night I left, he said. Never had the courage to send the second one. Maybe now. He pressed the box into my hands. You decide. I read mine that night on the porch while Mark cooked dinner inside. The words were simple, full of regret and love and hope. When I finished, I looked up at the stars and felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. I wasn't broken. I had never been broken. I had just been waiting for permission to be whole. 2 months later, my mother called. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. I read the letter, she said. There was a long pause. I was wrong, Victor. About a lot of things. We didn't fix everything in one phone call. Some wounds take years. But it was a beginning. Today I sit on the same bench where everything started, Joel on one side, Mark on the other, watching ducks fight over breadcrumbs. My father's hand rests on my shoulder, steady despite the tremors. Mark's fingers are laced through mine. The park is full of life, kids laughing, couples walking, the whole ordinary miracle of people being exactly who they are. I think about the boy I was, terrified of becoming the man my family erased, and I smile at the man I've become instead. True or false, a family's love is only real if it survives the truth of who you are.